Has the skyrocketing supply of active listings finally leveled off? I'm Ron Milligan with RE/MAX Select here in Portland's Pearl District, and I have the latest market statistics for the full Portland metro area. That's both Portland and Oregon sides of the border, Southwest Washington included, and all of the major suburbs of the Portland metro area. So the big news is that, a few weeks ago when I was talking about, well, we have one data point and that doesn't necessarily create a trend. Now we have more data points that point to maybe our market is finally leveled off. If you remember, we kind of hit that inflection point back in April, May, when the number of active listings this year shot past the numbers that we'd seen in the previous year. Leading up to that point, we had fewer active listings. So the supply and demand equation was really, really small compared to the previous year. Had that inflection point that was brought on by interest rates on the rise, and the number of active listings just skyrocketed. We were seeing numbers at 150, 250, 350. Even one week it was an increase of 400 active listings in a single week. And about 5 weeks ago, just take a look at the numbers here, the number of active listings really started to level off. We saw that number about 5-6 weeks ago now, 5503, then we saw it reduced to 4614, then back up to 5488, up a little higher to 5528, then down again 5454, and then again down again, really, really small number down. But still, it's a reduction, and it really does show that for the last 5-6 weeks now, the number of active listings has stopped skyrocketing and has leveled off. So we'll see what happens. I suspect, again, what's going to happen is that buyer demand will remain relatively stable. We won't see a ton of brand new listings to the market, except for those factors, those folks that are being compelled to sell by death, marriage, divorce, kids, and job transfers. Those are the ones that generally provide a lot of our active listings throughout the off season, throughout the fall and the winter. And I suspect that buyer demand is going to remain relatively stable. I'm starting to see a lot more buyers come knocking at my door, and I suspect that some buyers are realizing that this market is no longer free falling. It's not 2008 all over again. And that it's probably a good time if you've got a VA loan with zero down, or you're doing a down payment assistance program, or you've got just a small down payment, that it's a chance for you to get under contract, where in the last 2 years you had pretty much zero chance. So the other thing is, I just mentioned this, the number of new pending deals, 717, that's down from the last couple of weeks, and it's probably on the lower end of what we've been seeing for about the last 11-12 weeks, but in the range that we've been seeing for about 3 months now. So we're seeing that buyer demand is pretty level. It may continue to drop off very slowly as we go through the fall and winter, but we'll just watch that number and see if that changes dramatically one direction or the other. Last year, that number, just for context, was 894. Of course, last year we had interest rates that were in the high 2s and low 3s. The number of homes sold was down from the previous week. Last week we saw 648. This week we're seeing 613. That is a little bit lower than what we've been seeing earlier on in the spring, but kind of in line with where we've been for the last several weeks. Not a surprise, fewer number of new pendings results in fewer closed sales. So how did those homes that did sell do on the market? On average, they sold at $615,537. That's lower than we saw last week. But when we compare it to last year at this time to get kind of our measure of how we're doing appreciation-wise, last year we were at 563.1. That number went down even further versus the previous week last year. So that increased the average sale price to 9.3% higher this year versus what it was last year. If you remember last week, that was 7.3. The week before that was 4.6. So that number seems to be on the rise. We'll just watch that. I suspect by the time we hit the end of the month, that number is probably going to land around 7% for the month, comparing this month versus the previous month, the average sale price. Average days on market was 25. Last year that was 17. And then the median days on market dropped by 2 from 14 to 12. Last year that number was 6. On average, homes that sold at 97.74% of their original asking price. Again, in a normal market, we would list and we'd hope to land somewhere around 98% of the original asking price. So not terrible for a typical market, but bad compared to where we were last year and the year before. Last year, that number was 101.46. So I think we're done with those days of, seeing that average sale price being higher than the original asking price. Those days are gone. REOs and short sales. REOs are bank-owned properties, and short sales are properties that are distressed, where the sellers, the owners have maybe stopped making their mortgage payment for one reason or other. Just keeping an eye on this to see how much of that we're seeing on our market. For the active listings, we saw 20 bank-owns and 6 short sales. Keep in mind that's out of a total of 5,435 active listings in the metro area. And then one more thing, which is just a comparison of last year's active listings versus this year's active listings. 5,435 is what we have this year. Last year that number was 3,595, so we're up 51.2%. We have 51.2% more active listings this year than we had last year at this time. Keep in mind that a few weeks ago, that number was over 60%. So that gap between last year and this year has been receding in the last few weeks. So once again, we just keep an eye on this. It's starting to look like it's kind of leveled off. It's starting to look more like a normal market. This is could be similar to markets we've had in the past where interest rates have been, somewhere between 5 and 6%. That's, 2015, 16, 17, 18. I remember when interest rates broke into the 4% range, and we were all going crazy because we'd never seen rates that low before. So it could be that a lot of buyers are getting over that sticker shock. So while you're on my channel, I would love it if you checked out the video I just posted before this one. That's where I took the July numbers, which is the most recent complete month of numbers that we have from RMLS, and I plotted it back 15 years so that you've got a little more context for where our market is now, not just compared to the white hot markets of last year and the year before, but to more normal markets. So check that video out, and then of course I'd love it if you gave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification so that you get notified every time we add new content, and share this video with someone you think that might need it. All right, we'll see you next week.